With deforestation threatening Madagascar's natural diversity, efforts in the Zitonga-Barika forest bring signs of hope for the reversal of climate change.
Bandits and Boko Haram insurgents face a new threat. Vowing to do everything possible to protect Nigeria's sovereignty, army officials unveil a fleet of 60 armored personnel carriers.
Zimbabweans recovering from Cyclone Idai generate income while saving the forests, leaving behind the risks of illegal gold panning. They now harvest liquid gold provided by honeybees.
Hello and thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Chamberlain Osoa, Channels Television here in Lagos. I'm joined by Vincent Makori from Voice of America in Washington.
Well, thanks, I'm Vincent Makori at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Our broadcast still looks a little different because of the global pandemic, but we truly appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Channels Television in Lagos brings you that story.
It could be the beginning of the end of the road for terrorists in Nigeria as the Nigerian army acquires 60 new armored personnel carriers from China to help tackle the ongoing Boko Haram insurgency and banditry ravaging parts of the country. Speaking during the commissioning in Jaji, the commandant of the Infantry Corps, Major General Victor Izugu, representing the Chief of Army Staff, says the new inventory will strengthen efforts to tackling security challenges across all regions and that the leadership of the Nigerian army will do everything possible to protect the nation's sovereignty.
In the last 1 decade, Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria's northeast zone has become a major threat to the country and has also emerged as a destabilizing factor across sub-Saharan Africa. This has been further compounded by the emergence of banditry and kidnapping in the northwest and some other parts of the country. Although the past and present governments have deployed both human and material resources in the fight against insecurity, the inability of the armed forces to win the war has been linked to many factors, including a lack of adequate equipment. As part of efforts to boost the war against banditry and terrorism in the country, the Nigerian Army has taken delivery of 60 new VP-1 armored personnel vehicles acquired from China. The new armored vehicles have a carrying capacity of between 2 to 13 fully equipped troops. Its all-wielded steel armor hull provides protection from small arms fire and shell splinters. Commissioning the equipment, the Chief of Army Staff, represented by the Commandant Infantry Corps, Jaji, Major General Victor Izugu, says the induction of the new armored tanks will go a long way in boosting the efforts in tackling security challenges across all regions.
These platforms we commission here today is in addition to other equipment brought in for the purpose, and this underscores the strategic resolve to ensure that a state of normalcy is achieved across the length and breadth of Nigeria.
Ahead of their arrival in the country, the Nigerian Army personnel have been trained in China to operate the equipment.
The receipt of these dearly required armored personnel carriers over 3 months ago and the hands-on training that ensued with over 100 personnel is a clear indication that the end of insurgency is now.
I want to boldly encourage all the trainees and all the soldiers of the gallant Nigerian Army to take every opportunity to learn from each other and train more and to know more about this APC.
In May 2019, the federal government had provided funding for the acquisition of modern equipment for the Nigerian Armed Forces, with some in service and others on the way. These armored personnel vehicles are therefore expected to strengthen the land force of the Nigerian Army in the battle against Boko Haram terrorists, bandits, and other enemies of the state.
Joining us to discuss this is a security consultant and an expert, Mr. Seyi Adetayo. Glad to have you on Africa 54.
Yeah, glad to be here.
What is your impression about this latest acquisition from China?
Okay, I think the news was greeted with so much enthusiasm and joy. At least we're beginning to see results of procurements made by governments, unlike what we've been hearing before about money being allocated or being budgeted for armaments and equipment, and you don't get to see them. Even though this is not something that was purchased now, it's part of the $1 billion that was released about 3 years ago for procurement of armament. And because you know that we don't produce, and the country that produce this equipment, they don't just produce and keep in warehouse. So when you pay is when they begin to manufacture. So that's the big issue here, because if you're spending so much money into procuring equipment, and it takes 3 years for us to take delivery, we can as well spend so much that kind of money into research and development, and they try to bring those manufacturers down into Nigeria, and within 3 years, I think we can start doing something in that regard, because it's not just about procuring it. You still have to service it, you still have to maintain it, you need spare parts. So, and this will continue to gop money from our own end, and then increasing GDP and creating employment at the other hand.
Does that suggest that DICON should have a role here?
Oh, definitely. Not only DICON. What are we doing with the graduates that are, we're producing every year? University of Lagos, Obafemi University, they have Met and Mat, that is Metallurgical and Material Department in OAU, and several other universities. What are they doing? That is what they do. Is the research on metals. So these are metals. It's just for us to design, and that's why we need to invest in R&D, bring all these guys. See, at every time these guys are coming out of university, they do their own projects. This could be part of what the department could say, why don't we build a prototype of maybe T175 tank or something like that? They will. It is not out of place for them to produce that as a research, project.
Yeah. Well, we also took delivery of some Tucano jets from the U.S. So what kind of impact do you think this acquisition, both the Tucano jets and this ones from China, will have on the challenges for security here?
Definitely, the Tucano jet is already bringing some level of advantage to the Nigerian armed forces. If you look at the way Tucano, the design of the Tucano and the success of the campaigns that the United States armed forces have used Tucano for, it's like when you have an attack helicopter and also Alpha jet put together. Now, the Alpha jet is an effective flying machine, but its efficiency or efficacy is on attack and interdiction. It's too fast to support ground troops. So it flies at a very high speed. And now there are times when the troop will need, air support as they are, advancing. And that's why at times you use attack helicopters to support them. Now, this Tucano has the capability to perform the two. The Tucano can fly at a very low speed. It can even balance in the air and then give them that support while the troops come from behind, helps them in clearing. And that is what, Alpha jet cannot do. So Tucano can come down, fly at a very low altitude, fly very low and very slow, and then start clearing. It can engage at close quarter, unlike an Alpha jet that will have to fire high up, and it moves very fast. Yeah,
a lot of these equipments are also going to be deployed based on intelligence.
Oh, definitely.
How well do you think the Nigerian Army has fared in that regard?
Well, so we need to understand two things that we are confronting here. Insurgency, and we're also confronting terrorism. Now, terror is a means to an end. Insurgency is the end. They want a territory. They want to have a control. But in the process of trying to achieve that, they deploy acts of terror. Like I do tell people, intelligence is not like 1 + 1 = 2. There are times when you may have information and you might not act. You are not acting does not mean that you are not. You are acting by not acting. you might require that, okay, because what you want is much more than what is already on ground. You want them to actually get to that end and be able to get more information on what they want to do, or probably you are expecting a bigger convergence that if you neutralize them at this point, it will notify the people that are coming that, okay, they're already aware. So you might want them to act. So at times when you don't see actions being taken, you see, intelligence is so broad, and it depends on the people that are in authority. The goal will determine the course of action. That is not to say that at times intelligence were being given and actions were not taken because somebody is not actually doing his job. But most times it might be because of the bigger picture. They're expecting a bigger result, and they decide to wait, allow the enemy to feel comfortable and feel free, and allow them to converge more. Then they come and they have a better result by the time they eventually strike.
Well, today you got that point, Mr. Sheyi Adetayo. Thank you for your time today.
Pleasure is mine.
Laborers from Kenya say they have endured abuse in the Middle East, often at the hands of their employers. But an aid agency is offering them a chance at rehabilitation and reintegration. Hundreds of survivors of forced labor are now able to access support offered by a group that provides a soft landing for those in need. For VOA, Brenda Molinya reports from Nairobi.
Faith Murunga's store on the outskirts of Kenya's capital is barely 6 months old, but it is putting food on her family's table. It isn't what she had anticipated when she left Kenya in 2019 for work in Saudi Arabia, a popular work destination for those unable to find jobs in Kenya. She says what she was promised as she emigrated and what she found there were worlds apart.
The boss came and told me that as long as I agreed to travel to their country, I must do each and every chore. I would not have the right to complain. They had paid a lot of money to buy me. I was therefore their property.
During her 2 years of service in Saudi Arabia, she suffered both emotional and physical abuse at the hands of her employer until a Good Samaritan came to her aid and facilitated her return to Kenya, where she received help from Heart Kenya, an organization that fights human trafficking and helps people like Faith. Since Heart Kenya was formed in 2010, the organization has helped more than 700 survivors of forced labor who have come home scarred. Masia Tieno, the organization's outreach programs manager, said the survivors, 80% of them women, have varying degrees of trauma when they seek their help.
When a survivor comes to us, they're actually they're distressed. Some of them appear confused. They don't know what to do next. And you find someone who does not know where to start. They do not have a house. They don't want to go back home because everyone knows they went abroad. So they're expecting that they will come with something.
The organization takes in survivors of forced labor and other work-related abuses and helps them rebuild their lives through counseling, training, and supporting their ability to make a living.
This process is actually a very participatory process where it's the case worker and the survivor chatting ways into which they are going to work together for proper rehabilitation. So the survivor has a voice, and they can actually say no to a service because our services are individualized and they are survivor-centered.
The union that fights for the rights of workers says the migration of workers to the Middle East is likely to continue as long as Kenya's 10% unemployment rate stays as high as it is.
Seek for proper information. Consult widely. And before you go, get it right.
For now, Faith is grateful for another chance at life, away from the abuse she suffered in a foreign land. Brenda Molinya for VOA News, Nairobi.
It's time now for a short break, and as we do, we remind you to visit our website, channelstv.com, for news and programming around the clock. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. Still to come, war's impact on ancient cultural heritage sites as conflicts continue Ethiopians take stock of losses and their prized cultural treasures.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Madagascar is known for its rich and diverse wildlife, but experts say forest degradation is a growing threat to both animals and humans. As Anne Zilku reports from Madagascar's Zimbabwe forest, there are success stories thanks to reforestation and meant to reverse the effects of climate change.
Last year, this waterfall in the Zimbabwe forest disappeared for 6 months as many waterways in the forest dried up. The state, with the help of the local population, launched a reforestation program.
We use this water source for our farms. I'm proud to contribute to the reforestation of this forest, which is a source of life. Our children will not have the same environmental problems as we do.
The country has also lost nearly 40% of its natural forest. Advocates blame climate change, but also the cutting of trees by the local populations.
It contributes especially to the mitigation of climate change at the global level. The forest of Zimbabwe is a carbon sink at the global level in a context where greenhouse gas emissions are increasingly important. Madagascar contributes to this global objective.
According to data drawn from the Global Carbon Project, Madagascar produces less than 0.01% of all the carbon dioxide generated in the world.
What we are asking is that the countries that pollute the most should help the countries that pollute the least, so that we can really, in my opinion, mitigate the impact of this climate change and help the population in this part of the island.
The states are expected to find an agreement to limit global warming to avert any more crises like the drought that threaten Madagascar's forest land. Anne Zwanke for VOA News, Zimbabwe, Madagascar.
The ongoing conflict between the central government and the ruling party of the northern region of Tigray has taken its toll on the country's ancient cultural heritage sites. Ethiopians are now taking stock of losses to their prized cultural treasures. Berham Yeshiwa's historical treasures curator and Ethiopia's National Museum says the country's treasures are in danger.
Fento Alemu, a tour guide who fled fighting in Lalibela to Addis Ababa, sits with his family looking through photographs of his time working in UNESCO World Heritage Site. The country's year-long conflict has destroyed ancient churches and mosques, some reportedly damaged by shelling, others looted. Countless others are inaccessible for worshippers seeking to pray or make pilgrimages.
No harm has been done to the church according to the information I have so far. A buffer zone has been set around the church. An area has been designated where people cannot go beyond that line.
Some of Prophet Muhammad's first disciples came to what is now called Ethiopia to escape persecution in Mecca. They were welcomed and given refuge by the Aksumite kingdom, whose capital was Aksum in Tigray. Historians say some of these disciples built Al-Najashi Mosque. Although many disciples eventually returned to current-day Saudi Arabia, 15 are said to be buried at the mosque.
Where there are conflicts, treasures disappear, get stolen or damaged. Therefore, our treasures are in danger at this moment because of these conflicts.
Today, the city is still dotted with several ancient engraved stone columns. It is considered a rich archaeological site. Tens of thousands of Ethiopian Christians normally visit for the festival of Sion Mariam, celebrated at the end of November.
After Cyclone Idai hit in 2019, some Zimbabweans turned to activities like illegal gold panning to survive. Now, voluntary service overseas and international development charity is giving them a new option, beekeeping. As Columbus Mavunga reports from the town of Chimanimani, life has turned sweet for one Zimbabwean because of the honey from his bees.
While some in Chimanimani started gold panning after surviving Cyclone Idai in 2019, 21-year-old Washington Nyakaze turned to beekeeping after he and his family survived the disaster. He has no regrets as he gets at least $300 a month from organic honey sales.
Since I started beekeeping, I've seen a change in my life. Money is now coming to our home through honey sales. At times, I even wonder if it's me having some of the amount of money I get some days.
Their fields were left in tatters after cyclone struck, leaving millions in Malawi, Mozambique and Zimbabwe homeless and hungry. Voluntary service overseas Zimbabwe is training villagers, mainly youth, to do beekeeping here in Chimanimani.
Due to climate change, unpredictable droughts and persistent flooding after Cyclone Idai, we've managed to realize that beekeeping is a viable adaptation strategy. So we've trained young people in beekeeping so that they can also earn some income as a secure and resilient livelihood option.
Roslyn Mukonowe-Shuro now works for a local NGO, but used to work for the government-owned Zimbabwe Forestry Commission. She says beekeeping is advantageous to the environment.
Beekeeping is very important because we see that once people are practicing beekeeping, they will protect their forests. And as a result, they won't cut the trees because they need the trees for forage. And at the same time, they won't burn the forest because they still need to have their hives as well as the forage.
According to the Forestry Commission, Zimbabwe loses 330,000 hectares of forest annually as a result of deforestation, but Nyakaze is jealously guarding all the trees near his home. He plans on increasing his 50 beehives to more than 100 next year and wants to start exporting his organic honey to Europe and the United States. Columbus Bavungam for VOA News, Chimanimani, Zimbabwe.
Morocco has introduced a mandatory COVID-19 vaccination pass to give citizens access to restaurants and other public places. This gesture has triggered protests on the streets, with Moroccans regarding the measure as a violation of their fundamental rights, the Constitution, and international laws.
Civilians and lawmakers in Morocco decry last week's introduction of COVID-19 vaccine pass to access public places. Registration to receive the jab has increased fivefold. Citizens are now required to present the document for access to all government buildings, as well as spaces such as cafes, restaurants, cinemas, gyms and transportation.
What we do is ask people for their vaccination pass. The biggest problem was a number of people left the cafe when we asked them to show their passes. But we do this by order of the authorities.
According to the opposition members, there was insufficient consultation and too little notice before imposing the pass. Health Minister Khalid Eid Talib says in the next few weeks, Morocco will be able to vaccinate 6 million people to reach a collective immunity level of 80% of its population over 12 years old.
People have come out to protest with one demand, which is the respect for the right to choose. Citizens have the right to choose whether or not to get vaccinated.
Morocco has so far administered doses to 64% of its population, using mostly the AstraZeneca, Sinopharm and Pfizer vaccines. It has also started administering booster jabs.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word from Lagos.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. Remember, channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Chain Balanusa. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.